Speed is war. When your allies need you, every second matters. When you scout ahead, speed is of the essence. And fortunately, you have just the right tool for the job. The Republic BARC Speeder. Why has the Empire replaced it with a downgraded version? And why was it just as dangerous to the operator as it was to the enemy? The Speeder was born out of wartime necessity. Known formally as the Biker Advanced Recon Commando, it was designed at a moment when the Republic demanded speed and flexibility. Aratech Repulsor Company, a veteran name in Repulsorlift Technology, took on the challenge. During the Clone Wars, the company has pledged their allegiance to the Republic and as such have transitioned into developing a number of vehicles for them. Their creation balanced agility and practicality, combining a lightweight frame with modular components that could be built quickly and deployed just as quickly. The result was a speeder that was perfect for long-range reconnaissance missions as well as light combat and later medevac. Yet the BARC was not the only speeder built with the Republic. Aratech have also developed the 74Z speeder bike, an icon really, which would become mainline for the Empire later down the line. Within the Grand Army of the Republic, however, the use was rather limited. Aratech was one of the most experienced companies to undertake this challenge thanks to their extensive experience in building similar vehicles. The BARC Speeder operates on Repulsorlift Technology, which makes it very different from the walkers we're used to. But it is also very important to understand that unlike the walkers, BARC Speeders, as well as other speeders that operate on Repulsorlift Technology, require a planet. While a planet's natural gravitational field pulls objects inwards, the Repulsorlift Technology creates localized fields of negative gravity, known as repulsor fields, to achieve flight. This technology provides significant advantages like increased speed, mobility, and stability, while also allowing starships to maneuver or hover inside a planet's atmosphere. Larger starships often employ multiple repulsor engines arranged in an array, supported by multiple anti-gravity generators built into the craft themselves. Although despite all these advantages, the repulsor engine has a critical disadvantage, and that is shields. Vehicles that are based on repulsor technology cannot go through shields. A weakness easily observed during the Battle of Naboo, when the droid army was forced to march through the shields with the vehicles staying all the way back. And when it comes to starships, they cannot even enter a planet that's protected by shields, as we've seen in Rogue One. Aratech and the Republic were very much aware of this flaw, and that's one of the reasons why the AT-RT was created. A vehicle made to fulfill similar roles to the BARC Speeder, except following a walker design. Nonetheless, it had its own flaws as well, but when paired together, they could eliminate many of each other's disadvantages and compensate. Sitting at around 4.6 meters in length, making it fairly long, 1.3 meters in width, and 1.53 meters in height. It was able to reach top speeds of 520 km per hour, although these were used more under extreme circumstances. But the advantages of the repulsor engine did not stop there. It actually allowed the BARC to perform low-level flights as well, which meant it was good for escort missions. And when it comes to the armament, equally impressive. The standard configuration allowed up to 4 blasters to be installed at a time on the back and the front of the vehicle. These weapons were primarily used in anti-infantry roles, but sometimes they could actually prove to be useful against armored vehicles. The passenger capacity of this vehicle was initially 1, but as the Clone Wars progressed, various modifications have been created. And one notable addition was the sidecar. And if the sidecar came with a weapon, it could easily bring the total amount of armaments to 5. And what makes it even better is that the sidecar was not fixed in a single orientation, allowing the passenger to rotate in a 180-degree arc and engage targets in a wider field of fire. As the vehicle's speed and versatility gained popularity across the army, Aratech realized it has more potential than just combat, and as such, engineers have soon developed a medical variant. And this effectively changed the entire role of the BARC Speeder from light reconnaissance to medevac, allowing it to transport wounded to fill hospitals. But not everything was sunshine and rainbows with this vehicle. Beyond the massive limitation when it comes to shields, the vehicle was just as dangerous to the operator as it was to the target. Speed is war, and the faster side pushes the slower side to react instead of allowing them to act, and that's a fact. Yet this speed can actually kill the driver for the smallest ever made mistake. Because let's keep it real, no mistake is small when you're traveling at over 500 kilometers an hour. Even the smallest misalignment will end up with you likely dead. At the same time, the speeder had little to no protection for the driver and internal modules. That meant it was very sensible to even the smallest fire. A well-placed shot from a small blaster could easily cripple the engine, and you're likely gonna end up dead. It could even wound the operator mid-drive due to the lack of actual protection, and, well, I think you know where I'm going with this. Even so, this actually did not scare the clone troopers much. And because of that very lack of fear, the BARC Speeder was used by units all across the front. But one group really made use of it, the 91st Mobile Reconnaissance Corps. Led by Clone Marshal Commander Neo, who delivered swift justice to a traitorous Jedi General from his BARC Speeder during the Siege of Seleucus Kami. And beyond the usual military use, the BARC Speeder found itself operating as part of law enforcement operations. On Coruscant, to be precise, by the Coruscant Security Force. And this police variant was really just a different paint job. It still had its weapons. But then again, Coruscant does have some very rough neighborhoods, so I'm not really surprised.
You're under arrest.
During the rise of the Empire, the BARC was used for a while, but it was eventually replaced by what many could consider a downgrade. The 74Z speeder bike was inferior in nearly every respect when it came to comparing it to the BARC Speeder. It couldn't be modified with a sidecar or a stretcher. It was even less protected, and instead of 4 weapons, it only had 1. Hell, it was so bad that scout troopers had to use their sidearm to fire from the bike. And beyond all of that, the design was really ugly too. So why the change, you may ask? Officially, it's not written anywhere, but it's not hard to figure it out. It all came down to the Empire's new doctrine. Because unlike the Republic, the Empire had no grand wars to fight anymore. Instead, it found itself having to rule over thousands of worlds, reaching itself all across the galaxy. And so without any major military opposition, the Empire's doctrine shifted to a show of force, using presence and intimidation to deter any unlawful, traitorous rebellions. And for a show of force to be properly effective, numbers have mattered more than quality. A single BARC Speeder was about 9.5 thousand credits to produce, while a 74Z Speeder was only 3,000. Which meant that for every BARC Speeder, you can make 3 74Zs. And so, in the eyes of Imperial Command, this was the best case scenario, because you can have all the quality you want, but if you cannot cover your ground, it will not do anything. And just like that, as time went on, the BARC had less and less presence on the field.
Where would you target these new
Now,
forces?
when it comes to real-life counterparts, the BARC Speeder doesn't have any real-world proper equivalent. However, it clearly borrows designs from vehicles dating all the way back to World War II. During that war, the Wehrmacht have fielded the KS-750 motorcycle, a vehicle that was built with the whole purpose being reconnaissance as well as light combat. It could be outfitted with a sidecar that could come in armed or unarmed, which increased the number of passengers to 2. This vehicle ended up being incredibly effective in its field and has left a large impact on the military mobility design. But if we are talking more modern times, a vehicle that we can compare it to would be the Kawasaki KLR-650, which was used by US Marines as well as Special Forces for light recon and transport. In conclusion, we have a vehicle that was built for one purpose but ended up achieving way more than it should have. Whether it engaged in light reconnaissance as well as combat or medevac, it was perfect for the war it found itself in. But unfortunately, once that war ended, so did its career.